All right, this is the second episode of the College Lifter podcast. This week we're talking about training while you're tired and sprinting instead of conditioning, or for conditioning rather. So sit back and enjoy the show. All right, so we are back here with the College Lifter podcast. And today I'm here with my co-host Ryan.
Hey.
And we're going to be going over a discussion we had earlier in the week, actually I think it was last week, about training while you're tired, mixed with the idea of training athletes with sprinting for their conditioning. And we kind of have a little bit different views on this.
Much different views. Different backgrounds yield different views. I mean, that's,
Yeah. So my background is I'm from Jacksonville. Played ball at Providence School. I was not very good. So, no one please get offended who I played with. I realize I was not that good. But the kind of mode of athleticism was a little bit different out there from what I can tell. We weren't very strong, but we were much faster. And our summer workouts were structured where we would work out in the morning, do a heavy workout. More often than not, it was a leg workout. And then we'd have about 10, 15 minutes. And then we would go out and run sprints for another hour, hour and a half.
And I mean that's a pretty standard build for a lot of high school teams. I mean that's because you're talking about a coach that they coach football most of the time. You're not talking about an actual strength coach. So that's pretty normal. You see that a lot at that level. Those coaches that they're just like, well, we know we got to get stronger. We know we got to run sprints, so the order probably doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty standard. I think a lot of people see that in high school. Now, from my background, had really a very similar background in high school. Played 4 years of high school ball and had a lot of the same training. But going into college, playing college ball is stepping into a very, very sophisticated strength program. For 2 years. My first 2 years was under Justin Schwinn at USA. I mean, really well-known strength coach. I mean, the man is a genius. I mean, he took that team from the very first year the team was made in 4 years was cumulatively one of the strongest teams in the country. I mean, I want to say there was well over 50 guys on the team that squatted over 500.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking quarterbacks squatting 500.
That's insane.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this, like I say, one thing that he was really good at, and it was kind of that norm, kind of what you see in CrossFit now. The way a workout would start is that we would always go to the whiteboard, workouts on the whiteboard. He'd sit there and break it down for us, and then we'd go do it. And he was really good at explaining why everything was done the way it was done. Mm-hmm. So, and it wasn't always the same, but one thing that we would start with was the opposite of what you see a lot is we would do some kind of sprint work mechanics first. Mm-hmm. And I really, over time, really realized how important that is to take those mechanics, build those mechanics when you're fresh. That way you're not hindered by anything else. Mm-hmm. Because building that motor pattern is super important, whether it's on a lift or in a sprint. You have to take the time to build those motor patterns at sub-maximal conditions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's important to build them, but as far as a workout is concerned, I mean, you see the same thing at CrossFit. People criticize us for doing high-rep Olympic lifting. Mm-hmm. And I remember, it's terrible. People hate us for it, but I remember Kelly saying that the way he teaches it is you have to make your last rep look better than your first rep.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be applied to sprinting, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I agree with that 100%. And I think, after you've taken an athlete that's already really, really refined that pattern, which, I mean, there's 95% of the guys in the NFL still don't have a great sprint and still have room to get better. Mm-hmm. Just because there's so many tiny technical pieces of that sprint that they can get better at. I mean, we're talking about movement specifically, talking about arm pattern, gait pattern.
Yeah.
there's a lot of room for even those guys to change. Not saying that they're not phenomenal athletes, because obviously they're doing pretty damn good. They're getting paid to do what they do. But I think if you have an athlete like that that's already really refined that pattern, and then you put them under stress like that, you do go ahead and have them lift heavy and then sprint. Now you are challenging that pattern. You're challenging that pattern to fatigue muscles. And if you have a coach with them that can see that can see the breakdown, then I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. But we're also talking about a completely different caliber of athlete. I think when you're talking about young guys in high school, I don't think it's a great idea, just because like we said at the beginning, football coaches they coach football. Right. They're not. Chances are they're not super well trained on how to coach a sprint. The full breakdown of a sprint. Now I'm talking in generalizations, obviously. I'm sure there's plenty of football coaches out there that completely understand the breakdown of sprint mechanics. And so that's my view. At the younger age, we're talking like, mid-college and younger. I think it's important to maybe spend a little bit more time getting those mechanics better before we start putting the mechanics under stress.
So I'm assuming you believe the same thing about high rep lifting like we do here.
Yeah, with the high rep lifting, I love what Kelly says, talking about first rep or your last rep's got to be as good as your first rep or better. I think that you do have to spend a lot of time on the front end to learn the movement and learn that and refine that motor pattern and then put it under stress. Now, is it going to be perfect? No. But are people in here going to have a chance to make $10 million a year off of fast Olympic lifting?
Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
So that, but even saying that, that comes down to safety, obviously, in this case. But everyone here spends 3 weeks learning the snatch before they're allowed to do one. We're talking with PVC pipes and maybe a 25-pound bar once they've really proven they have that positioning. Just because that is super important. And Kelly talks about, I heard a podcast recently where he talked about, he had a guy, or he'll gladly come up to your bar and yank weight off your bar. Yeah. If you're, say, rounding the back in deadlift, or you're not getting underneath the snatch, or you're having soft shoulders, things like that. He said he's literally walked up to a person and sat on their barbell so that they couldn't lift it because they wouldn't listen. And then, and that's a problem you run into as a coach. But
that's a pretty ballsy coach.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's tough. You run into those things as a coach.
That's a good thing though. Like, you need those people in this industry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And you know what? The person may be upset right then, but if they're any kind of level-headed person, they will very quickly realize.
Yeah. Once the adrenaline wears off.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we all get like that. We all get pumped up in a workout, and then you cool down, and you're like, okay, Yeah. Because we've all done workouts, maybe starting off in CrossFit or any type of training where you're pumped up, you're trying to hit those big lifts, and then you get done and you're like, say you're doing heavy deadlifts or something like that, and you get done and your back's a little sore that afternoon, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, like those sets of 12 you made me do today?
Yeah, like that. But when you're in the moment, especially younger, you're in the moment, you're just like, yeah, I got to do this. It's that almost immature lifter. I think that's the best word for it, but it sounds a little mean, but I think that's the best word, is it just not being experienced and wise enough to say, maybe I do need to just kind of back it up. And there's plenty of ways. If we're talking in that case specifically, like you're talking about the deadlifts from today, if you're like I was doing a heavier weight and I could tell I wasn't in great position. That's the first time I've deadlifted in like 2 months.
Yeah, you looked a little stiff.
Yeah. So I backed off the weight, even though the heavier weight was not a problem. Muscularly, I didn't have an issue with it. We backed off the weight, and I just moved it a little bit slower.
Yeah.
So just trying to put a little bit more stress on the muscle because we were doing a little bit more hypertrophy work. But yeah, it's if the pattern's right, everything else will be right.
Okay. So now, what do you think about doing metabolic conditioning versus sprinting for for a high school athlete? Because this is something, because I really see them as basically the same thing. If anything, metabolic conditioning is like sprinting with a weight vest, essentially.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Anything you're talking anything that's besides just sprinting straight up. We're running 50 yard sprints. Anything that's besides just sprinting is metabolic conditioning. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, well,
anything that adds an added
let's say
stress.
CrossFit.
Okay.
Let's say CrossFit versus sprinting. Like, am I going to do Fran or am I going to do 8 200s with 1-on-1 work to rest?
Right. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. What do you think? I want to hear your opinion first.
Well, so here's my thing. We both agree, I believe, I think we've talked about this before, that CrossFit doesn't make you fast. Traditional CrossFit. Traditional CrossFit is more, you're going to do a lot of work.
We're talking specifically the metabolic conditioning.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to build that speed.
Yeah, you're not going to be quick. You're just going to be able to do stuff.
Yeah, just the metabolic conditioning isn't going to make you really strong.
Right.
Right, because once you have put yourself in that deep not oxygen deficit, that's the wrong word, but once you're gasping for air, we'll just put it like that. Yeah. Gasping for air, you're not able to readily supply that muscle with oxygen, and now you're not getting full contraction. Right. Just like you can't snatch your max, after running a 400 meter.
And I don't think you want to be fast. I mean, like, I love Dan Bailey. He is probably my favorite CrossFitter at the high level.
Sweet biceps.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about, he's got these crazy biceps I wish I had. But if you look at him, I think it was 2-3 years ago in regionals, he was right next to Rich, and I think they were doing thrusters. And Dan would crank out 5 really, really fast, and then stop and look like, as he describes, a racehorse after a race, just drooling everywhere.
Yeah, and then signature Dan Bailey drool. And
then Rich would kind of catch up, but he just wouldn't stop moving, and then Dan would pick the bar up, do 5 really, really fast, and then put it down, and Rich would just keep going. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you want to be fast in CrossFit, but for someone like a high school athlete, I think you need to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If we're talking now, we're talking more like football, right?
Football, basketball, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're talking 2 completely different dynamics in terms of training. Now, are the trainings going to look somewhat similar? Yeah. Are the conditionings going to look similar? Yeah, the conditionings look very similar if you're doing it correctly. Now, I
don't know about that.
We're talking a new model here.
Right.
So, old school football, it will always tell you got to run sprints. Yeah. You got to run sprints. One of your favorite people, John Wellborn, talks about how running sprints for football it's not bad. It's not something that you should completely exclude,
right?
Obviously. But he brought up a point one time talking about you look every year, any football team.
Right.
Most, especially high school. You look at any football team, they're out there all summer running sprints. Usually a good model that a lot of coaches follow is, condition before summer, right after spring, so you have the work capacity to do all the lifting and training that they're going to do over the summer, and then you condition again right before camp. Right. That's a good model. The idea of conditioning at those times is a great model.
Right.
So, but every high school coach's go-to is running sprints, which running sprints isn't bad. But this is the point that John Wellborn made is you look at any team that does that, any team, they go into camp, everyone is still gasping for air.
Okay. Well, I hate to say this because I do look up to John Wellborn. I do love the material he puts out and his background and his perspective on things. But, okay, here's my question. So if you run a 10-minute mile this year, and then next year you run an 8-minute mile, and this is a max effort mile, well, let's put it this way. You back squat 200, and then you back squat a couple months later 250.
Yeah.
Are you just as tired at the end as you were, even though it was a lighter weight? Because the test for a sprint, it's all out. The test is how fast you're going. So you're supposed to be gassed anyways.
Yeah.
The improvement is
the time.
Yeah, and the ability to repeat that time. So like what we did was we had each position was divided up. So you'd have linemen, D linemen, DBs, all this, and they'd have to make it under a certain time. And as the training cycle went on, that time got shorter. And that's where the test is. You're supposed to be tired. It's a max effort repeated. If you look at sprinters, their workout, there's a lot of different schools of thought, but, they got pyramids. They've got, you're going to do X amount of this distance and all that. you're still gassed at the end. The conditioning is a side effect, and I think that's the thing with sports like football is I don't need you to go a mile.
Right.
But I need you to be able to do the volume of a mile in spurts for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I get completely where you're coming from, and you made a really good point talking about a sprinter. Mm-hmm. What is a sprinter going to do for conditioning?
They're going to sprint over and over again.
They're going to sprint, right? So, would you say the only component of football is sprinting?
No.
There is a hell of a lot more.
But
so why would you condition only half of your muscular system? You know what I'm saying? So this is what I'm getting at. Okay. This is my point. I'm not saying football players should be doing normal traditional CrossFit. I'm not saying you should see every football player in the nation with their team doing thrusters and kipping pull-ups, and I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, and this is the model that I follow for training athletes, and we spoke about this the other day, about it's all about training movements. Right. So I think putting sprints in there is good at times. I think it has its place because there is a big sprinting component in football.
Yeah.
But there's also a big pressing component. There's also a huge triple extension component. There's also a big going from 0 to 100 in 2 feet component, that acceleration component. Yeah, there's so many pieces that you have to train. So just like let's say we'll keep it at CrossFit. Let's say you're somebody that you do a workout and you're doing thrusters, and thrusters are fine. You're good with thrusters, and then you go do pull-ups, and pull-ups crush you.
That would be me.
What are you going to do to get better?
I'm going to do more pull-ups.
You're going to do more pull-ups, exactly. So that's the school of thought that I'm coming from.
Okay.
Is that if we're just sprinting, we're only training, we're only teaching our body, and I'm going back to, I'm trying to think more along the lines of a nervous response more than just a cardiorespiratory response. You're going to breathe and you're going to increase that VO2 over time doing anything, running sprints. Absolutely. That's actually the only thing that's proven to increase VO2 max is high intensity interval training. But
that's not the point of the training. The point is speed. Conditioning is a byproduct.
Right.
Of the
and I'm with you on that. So what I'm getting at is, should we just train the sprint for conditioning? Should we just train the sprint to make them more ready to play? Or should we train all these other components? Should we have them do, sprint for 30 seconds? You do a 30-second sprint. Or let's keep it more football. Let's say you do a 5-second max effort sprint, rest for 20 seconds. You come over here and you hit the sled, say for 5 seconds, max effort, and then you get a 20-second rest. And then you come over here and you do reverse ball throws, back overhead, working that triple extension.
We did some of that,
for 5 seconds. And now we still kept that conditioning model. This is still conditioning, but now we're conditioning the movements. Instead of and you do some rounds of that. Now we're conditioning movements and not conditioning the cardiorespiratory system. We're trying to condition the nervous system at the same time and teach the muscles how to work better.
So what do you think about the idea of doing something, I guess you'd say similar to CrossFit, but not exactly? So like doing supersetted heavy exercises and then the sprinting component. Because now you're tired.
Yeah.
Now you have to
now you're saying
have
sprint.
Good motor pattern in a sprint, go fast when you're muscularly tired after going through those sport-specific movements, if we want to call them
So you're
that.
saying we do all this lifting and these conditioning pieces, or just superset pieces, which has got a very slight conditioning component in it, and then sprint after.
Yeah, and then you go out and you go boom, boom, boom.
I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna say you keep that for the the older, more well-trained athletes. Like with my younger guys workout, even though it's on the same lines, is gonna look completely different from my older guys workout. It's the same general idea in the workout. We have the same goals, but the movements are going to be different because my older guys are going to be much more proficient in their motor patterns and their movements than the younger guys. Yeah, I mean, I don't exactly have 8-year-olds doing clean and jerks.
Well, yeah.
Right. So and that's where that idea comes from. I'm not going to just toss an 8-year-old a bar after running sprints and like, hey, do some clean and jerks. Even though he may understand what it is, and we may have played around with the PVC pipe some, but that's going to be the least optimal time for him to do those movements is when he's already tired.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, I don't think there's exactly a wrong answer. I don't think because there's there's obviously been plenty of great athletes built out of poor systems that maybe that system just worked for them.
Yeah.
That's just what they needed. So.
See, okay, here's another thing that's going to go completely off topic.
All right, here we go. I'm ready.
I am of the opinion that a lot of times when people say, oh, this just works for me, that's an excuse of trying to save face.
Okay.
But I have seen the same thing you're talking about with people who come out of really bad systems, but whatever, mentally or whatever, it just works. So what's your perspective on that? Do you think when someone's like, oh, well, this system works for me, but it's like, no, that's been proven that doesn't work?
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess we'd have to be more specific. I mean, like, a system that doesn't work, see, I've never even heard of a system that doesn't work. A training system, you know what I'm saying? Unless we're talking something completely ridiculous, like run sprints to increase your bench press, you know?
Well, okay,
like that probably won't work. But
no.
I mean,
what do you think about the old school stuff of, I forget the running back from Georgia's name, but our coach loved him and the idea that he did just push-ups. He didn't even bench press, and then all of a sudden he jumped up and he got like, what was it, 300-400, something like that, maybe 5. I'm not sure.
I think there's some levels to that. I think there's some layers that you know can be worked through, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that have the exact answer, but I know I don't. But there's a lot. I mean, everybody's obviously genetically coded different. That's not a secret. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Everybody knows there's certain things that they're going to respond to. I mean, let's keep it super simple in the bodybuilding community. You know, if there are guys that know the movements that activate their muscles the best. Now, that may be positioning, that may be a little bit of mobility, it may just be the way they do it. Or it may be that their muscle just likes that stimulus. It likes that, their genetic coding likes that rep set. It likes that time under tension. You know, buzzword, time under tension.
Oh, goodness.
You know, there's a lot of levels to that, and who knows? The guy that did the push-ups, you said I'm not quite sure who you're talking about, but he did. You talked about
He did push-ups and lunges and air squats, and he was a running back for Georgia way back in the day, and he was just an amazing athlete. And he jumped on the bench and hit like I think.
For the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, really and truly, if you're doing a push-up correctly, it's the same pattern as a bench press, so there's no reason you can't get stronger.
But we're taught high rep stuff is different than max effort stuff.
That's true.
So that's where my disconnect in my brain goes, is how does that's not supposed to correlate.
Still though, you increase the cross-sectional area of the muscle, no matter what you do, you increase the cross-sectional area of the muscle, what happens?
You get stronger.
You get stronger. Now, is it the most efficient way to get stronger?
Probably not.
Not even close. But is it the most efficient way to get stronger for him? Is that just, did his body really just like that rep set? Or, I mean, and there's no telling, there might be more to the story. He might have done a lot of pause reps.
Yeah.
You know, he might have done a lot of eccentrics. You know, he might have put weight on his back. If he put weight on his back, well, there you go. That's why he got stronger.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's more to the story. That would be something to look into. But, yeah.
So, if you were going, actually, we already answered that. Never mind. I'm gonna close it. I'm gonna ask a question that might be interesting. So, did y'all ever play any mental games when you were in college or high school with the other team? As far as toughness, let's get into the mental side of this for a little bit. We're running out of time.
That's some crazy stuff. Now,
like, because one thing we did, and we all thought this man was crazy. He was crazy. He was a great guy, though. I remember doing Oklahoma drills, board drills, basically, at halftime, just because he wanted to watch. He wanted the other team to watch us doing it.
Wow, that's crazy.
Like, he was really into the mental side of it because we were a lot smaller, and he wanted the other team to see us doing it and to come out like, these guys are still fresh. What in the world is going on? You can't handle this.
I can see that. I could see that. I could see being on the other team and be like, wow, those guys are pretty crazy. Or no, honestly, in high school, I would have been like, oh man, they must have gotten so much trouble at halftime. That's wild. I'd never heard anything like that. I've had a lot of conversations with coaches talking about, like, doing little extracurriculars in the pile and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about that a lot, but
No, we didn't do that. That happened to us, but we didn't.
No. See, in high school, I was all about that. In college, I was a completely different player. I was very relaxed, very. In high school, high school is a great time to learn that aggression and to learn about yourself as an athlete, and learn how to just get pissed off and just go hit somebody. And in college, some people stay with that mindset, and some people change, and there's no wrong. I don't think there's a wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself becoming a much more technical player and being more relaxed when I played. Like, especially, like I said, I played 2 years at USA, and then I played 2 years at Belhaven. It was every game we would be standing there, like waiting for the ref to spot the ball or something, and I'm talking to the defensive lineman across from me.
Yeah.
Just having a conversation, But in high school, I was that guy that I wanted to slit your throat every play.
Right.
Like we're in the pile and I'm jabbing you in the ribs, or trying to get my hand under your face mask, stuff like that.
That will always piss me off. Yeah.
It's just different dynamics. Like I say, there's not a wrong way.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, is it morally right to try and hurt people?
Probably not.
No, but there's different styles of play.
So to kind of wrap this up into one little ending, because I know we went off a little bit. Time trials for straight out distance conditioning. You're basically agree with me in the fact of time trial, short interval sprints are better for conditioning.
Hands down, it's scientifically proven. There's not much argument there.
But you're wary of throwing them into conditioning tired. Well, into kind of structured sprinting, weightlifting conditioning tired.
Yeah.
Before they're competent in their movement pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a big part is build the movement pattern over time, really secure the movement pattern, and then challenge it.
Yeah.
It's fine to challenge it once you really locked it into place.
Yeah. One of the notes I had for this that I never got to was talking about listening to Brian McKenzie. He gave his guys 5K repeats a while back. And you had to hold your number. But I thought that was a great idea because it's like, well, I mean, if you want to run a marathon, show me.
That's right, yeah. That ain't no joke right there, but yeah, and that's a great way to build that pacing mentality of understanding where you need to be, not being caught up in the moment, but still being still being focused on the task at hand.
So how far do you think a college team should sprint? Just the last question. How far do you think, or not college, sorry, high school. How far, the distances and the intervals, do you think a high school team, football team, should do their sprints?
I think you can do it a few different ways. I believe that if you're working with more skilled guys, you're working with those DBs, receivers, you can keep them a little bit longer because they have the chance of going longer. Honestly, I would taper everything. Everything would be tapered. Nothing would be consistent. So if I'm working with DBs and receivers, they're probably going to run 500-yard sprints. Getting it done in around 16 seconds or so, if not less. I'd expect a little bit less than that. Then maybe 30, 45 seconds of rest. And then we'll work into some shorter, 50s and 40s and 20s and 10s. Something go and work longer in those intervals, just because the way I think about it is you have to model the training after the game, after what they're going to see. So the chances of them having to run 100 yards, probably only going to happen 4 or 5 times in a game. Right. That's on the high end. But them running 10, 20, 30 yards as a DB or a receiver, it's going to happen a lot. So we're going to want to condition close to that. Now linemen, those dudes, if we're talking O-linemen especially, they're running 10 to 20 yard sprints, probably 20 or 30 of them with not a whole lot of rest in between. So I'm thinking I would keep it more along the lines of about 20 seconds rest in between, just because they got to build that just explosive. And the biggest thing with offensive linemen, the most important thing, you hear about this a lot in CrossFit, is the ability to recover quickly. Right. And so that would be where you would build that ability to bounce back quick. Because as an offensive lineman, you have so much you have to think about. And if you're breathing hard, it makes it hard to think. Yeah, it does. So yeah, that's where I am on that.
All right. Well, I think that's going to conclude today's show. I think we've tied everyone up for long enough.
That was a good one. A lot of info.
Yeah. And I have so much more I want to ask, but I think we're out of time.
All right, cool.
So that's going to conclude it. We'll pick this back up next week. And this is your College Lifter Podcast.
See you guys.
All right, that's going to conclude today's show. Please join us afterwards on Twitter at CLifterPodcast to interact with us, stay updated with the show, and get sneak previews into future episodes.